Amy and I'm an artist here at Zieler Art Supplies. In this class I'm going to be taking you through some watercolour techniques. This is the second out of a 3-part series of art classes where I'll be guiding you through different styles and different techniques for watercolour painting. In the first class we went through some wet on wet techniques, making some really colourful pieces of artwork, like this one here. And in this week we're going to be going through some more subject-based painting, so painting some flowers and some landscapes and just using the paints in a different way. This will help to show you different styles of watercolour so you can decide what you like doing best. So to begin with, all you need is some watercolour set. I've got my Zieler Art Supplies bundle pack, which comes with the A4 watercolour paper, the watercolour palette with watercolour brushes, and the 5-piece brush set. So I've got some nice variety of brushes to get going, and also I'm using the Zieler A3 table easel. Other household items you'll need is some masking tape, some table salt and a glass of clean water. So let's get started. So to begin with, we're just going to do a little bit of a warm up and have a bit of an experiment around with our brushes and see which different kind of techniques and different styles we can get from using them. So with your watercolour paper, you can use this double-sided because when we're just messing around and we're not actually making pieces of artwork, you want to make the most of it. So once one side's dry, we can flip it over and keep playing around on the other side. So as you'll see, if you've got the Zieler brush set, this comes with 5 watercolour brushes as well as the water pens that you get with your paints. So these water pens can be ideal for when you're going out and about, because this little cylinder here, you fill it up with water. So you unscrew this, fill that up, pop it back on, and then there you have your water and your brush all in one. So then you don't need a little pot of water with you. You literally take the lid off, and when you squeeze, the water will start to come out the end. So they can be really handy thing to have because you've got it all in one there. But when we're at home, it's nice to have other brushes as well because we can get different effects with these. So you've got your long flat brush here, which is nice and large. This can be good for like kind of painting on backgrounds and smoothing our paints in. You have your rounded brush, number 8, which is what we used a lot during the last class. It's one of my favourite brushes just because it's quite handy for a lot of reasons. It's a little bit bigger so you can kind of get those colours across, but also it's got a nice fine tip at the end, so that can be nice for getting small details. We have our fan brush, which is really great for creating texture, and we have our 2 smaller brushes. So you've got your 0 round brush, which is tiny here, which again, lovely for little details. And then you have the number 3 round, which has a little bit of longer hairs on this. So again, that can be nice for creating different shapes, a little bit more elongated lines. But basically on our first sheet of paper, I'm just going to go through some different techniques, and you should also too. This will help you just to get used to using the brushes in different ways, showing what kind of areas you can create. And then later on in the class, we're going to put in those techniques that we've learned into creating some actual paintings. So starting off by using the water brush, I just squeeze the brush slightly and a little bit of water comes through the bristles. Then I can pick the colour up from my palette. So it's got a nice rounded shape, this water brush, so it can be good for getting colour down but also creating finer details. Now using rounded brush number 8, I'm just going to do a colour swatch onto the paper. This can be really handy just so you can see what all your colours look like when they're actually on the paper, and you can watch them as they dry. So I'm making sure I clean my brush in between because we don't want the colours to all mix up and go muggy. So it's interesting to see how much you can dilute the paint. So with these lines, I've started off with some blue and adding more and more water each line I create. Then you can see that kind of gradual fade you get. So you want to experiment with using the shape of the brush to create different lines and see how these turn out. So you can use the fan brush in a couple of different ways. So you can lightly speckle it and this will get some kind of dotted effect. Or you can use it on its edge, creating wavy lines. Have an experiment and play around with what different effects you can get with that. The long flat brush is great for spreading paint around your page, and you can also use it on its edge to get thinner lines. Then using the smaller brushes, you can practice doing intricate and fine details. Try some wavy lines and some flicked lines. So flipping the sheet over, we can then do some more practicing on the other side. An easy way to load the water brush is to stick it in some water and squeeze. The water will then get sucked up into the brush and you don't even have to unscrew it. So here I'm drawing a leaf shape, and this can just be good practice when using the brushes. I'm using the water brush to do this. It's using its fine tip for that middle and using it more fat and flat to create the leaves on either side of the vine. So while experimenting, you can use any colours for this. I've been using some greens with some blues, mixing them together. And then here I've got some smaller kind of leaf designs, still using the water brush, just experimenting and seeing what you can do with this. So now using the small rounded brush number 0, I'm just going to create again some more leaf kind of shapes. So here I'm just drawing a line down the middle, then either side I'm being really soft with my brush, with small flicking actions to create kind of a little hairy look to it. When we're creating artwork, we do need inspiration. So this is why today I've got all my plants around me, so when I am doing these drawings I can look at the different shapes of the leaves and get ideas of what to create. So here, keeping with my small brush and using some black paint, I'm just going to create the silhouette of a pine tree. So just have fun playing around, experimenting, not worrying what it looks like too much, creating different leaf shapes, different trees, kind of petal shapes. Use the brushes and play around with their natural shape and see what you can achieve. The more you do this and the more practice you get, the better you'll get at using your brushes and the more ideas you'll get for creating different nature scenes. So using the fat flat brush, I'm going to create some really cool multi-tonal lines. So using one corner of the brush into the orange paint and putting the other into the red paint, you'll see when I stroke these out on the page, you get that really cool multi-tonal blend. So this can be really fun and you can get some really nice designs doing this. Great, so now we've experimented with different brushes and what techniques we can get from those, and we've had a little play around with creating different shapes for like leaves and petals. We're now going to move on to paint some household objects of nature. So I've chosen to do some flowers because I've got some nice flowers in my house at the moment. So I've got this lovely blue orchid and also I have this little funky cactus. So you want to kind of go around your house, have a little look, see if you've got any flowers, any cactuses, any plants, or maybe you've got a garden with a couple of plants in, or if not, if there's some pictures online you like of plants, or you don't have to do plants, you can do other household objects. It's just nice to paint nature. But yeah, so we want to get those and then we're going to focus on actually trying to paint the subject. So to begin with for this, we are going to need to draw it out first. So if your drawing skills aren't great or you don't really like drawing or you're not really interested in it in this time, it can be easier just to use a template or to trace an image. So then you don't have to worry about drawing it out because drawing can be pretty hard. And when you're learning painting and trying to learn to draw as well at the same time, it can be maybe a little bit too much. So if you do want to just focus on the painting for today, there's no harm in literally going online, picking a template of a flower you like or something. You can get your piece of paper, hold it up to your laptop screen or your phone screen, turn the brightness up, and then you can trace through that image. So then you don't have to worry about trying to draw it out. But if you do want to challenge yourself and you do want to draw out your image like I will be doing, just try break it down into small chunks. Look at it as a shape and try and kind of add that together. But it can be a little bit difficult. But we do just want to focus on the painting, so if you are struggling, then pick a really simple and easy shape or object to draw as well. So yeah, gather your items and we'll see how my paintings turn out of these plants. So when you're drawing out your design, you want to make sure you're doing it really light in pencil, because we don't want the pencil to show through underneath the watercolour. When you're adding your paint, you want to add your lighter shades first. We can always build up the darker shades by adding more colour later on, but we want this to be a slow process of building up rather than rushing straight in with the dark colours. It's really important when we're layering up our paint that we wait for the layer to dry before adding more tones. So this is why I've got these two drawings on the go at the same time. I'm going to start painting the next one now while I wait for my first layer of my plant pot to dry. Really focus on looking at your objects and try pick out the colours suitable. Make sure that you're looking at the shades and the tones. You'll find most things are made up of darker tones and lighter tones, and this is what gives depth in an image. So while painting these leaves, I've started off by using a lighter green, and then with a dark green I've gone on one side to create a little shadow, so then you have a bit more tone in your image. Now the first layer is dry on my cactus, I can come back to this and add some darker blue to give some shade into the plant pot. You'll find sometimes you use too much water, or sometimes you don't need enough. You can have a little bit of paper towel next to you, and this can be really handy to dab your brush onto it to get rid of excess water. Because watercolours are translucent and not opaque, you need to paint what you see in the foreground first, because if you get the background on and then you want to add something in the foreground, the background that you painted will show through. So I'm starting off by painting things that I see in the foreground. Like on the orchid, I've done all the little buds first before adding in the actual stem. So once you've got your base colours in, you can then start to add your fine details. To do this, you're going to want to use a smaller brush, and you can start to add those fine little details to bring the piece really to life. But this is a slow process, and it's something that you build up. You can watch in this time lapse that over time you can see I'm adding layers and layers of different tones and different colours to get the desired effect. Practice does make perfect, so don't be disheartened by if what you paint doesn't look entirely like your plant. You've got to try again and keep practicing. It's the only way to get really good at painting, is just to keep looking at your image, breaking it down and trying to get those shadows and highlights in place. But this can take quite a while, and it might not turn out entirely how you thought it would, but it's enjoying the fun of the process and the relaxation that painting brings. So to build up the depth in this mountain scene, we're going to go from light blue to dark blue. The light blue is going to be the distant mountains, and the dark blue will be more the foreground. So using the lightest blue colour of my palette, I'm using rounded brush number 8 to pick out the colour. I've got a nice wet brush so that I'll get a really translucent look, because we want to create a really light blue. So if we want it nice and light, the more water we use, the lighter the colour will be. So we're slowly building this up. You can always add more colour and darken it, but it's very hard to lighten it. So go really wet and really light with the pigment so that we can get that really pale blue. Then we can use the fat flat brush as a blender brush. So wet the brush, but don't add any paint to this. Then we're going to put it straight on the page and just use that to blend and fade in those colours. So we're aiming for some really pale light blue, and we're going to create a nice fade. So take your time using nice steady strokes to work the paint into the paper so we can get that beautiful gradual fade. So we're going to layer up our mountain scene. So we're going to add our next range of mountains in a slightly darker blue. So using a bit more pigment here, we're going to do exactly the same procedure. So using rounded brush number 8 to add the colour on, then use our fat brush with just some water on to blend it all together. Repeat this process coming down the page, darkening the blue colours at each level. You'll notice, while the colours are wet, you will not get a defined crisp line. So you might have to just wait a little bit for each layer to dry so you can get that crisp edge of the mountain top. So for these final layers, I've mixed a bit of the dark green in with my blue to get a really nice deep turquoise. So once you've added in all those finishing touches, added in some crisp lines using the tip of your brush, we can then add some little foreground trees just to finish it off. And before we add these trees, we do just want to make sure our painting is fully dry. So like we did earlier in the class when we were experimenting with our brushes and I made some little pine trees, I'm going to do that just along the bottom just to give a little bit of foreground. And here I'm going to be using black, which I've mixed in with a bit of dark blue. You can use the palette that comes with the paints to mix your colours together. And here I am using the small brush, so rounded brush number 0, so I've got a lot of control. So I hope you enjoyed today's art class where we went through some more subject-based painting, so we're learning a little bit more about our brush control and getting inspiration with objects that you might find around your house. So I've got this nice little painting I did of my cactus and my orchid, and again we were like a bit more concentrated during this class because we're having to fill out and think about highlighting and shading to create a realistic painting of an object. And also had a bit more fun than kind of using our brushes, using different types of brushes to create some nice landscapes. So again, in this you've got that use of lighter colours with darker colours to create distance in a painting. So you know, you've got these mountain ranges in the distance which are a lot lighter colours, coming down to our foreground with our kind of little tree silhouettes at the bottom in the darkest colour. So it just shows by using different colours we can create that kind of foreground and background sense. So quite nice and simple, and a lot more kind of muted colours than we were in the previous class. So next week we're going to be putting what we've learnt in both classes together and making an overall painting. So creating a nice background with a foreground and learning how to use masking fluid as well to help us with this, and yeah, just give on some more different techniques in creating full pieces of artwork. So I hope you guys have a good week, and if you want to order any art supplies, Zieler are still taking orders, and I'll see you next week. Bye!